Guten Tag, and hello everyone, and welcome to our series on flying DCS aircraft. Now, a couple people have been asking a little while ago, would it be possible if you take some of the airplanes to DCS? You don't necessarily have to show us how to drop a Maverick on somebody or anything like that, but would you be so kind as to, kind of do your flying of videos in kind of your distinct style? And I said, well, I can try. I'm probably going to embarrass myself, but here we are. So today's aircraft, of course, will be the BF109, which is an incredible piece of machinery. The first time I took this thing for a spin, I don't think I've ever embarrassed myself so hard with a landing. And don't be surprised if my landing at the end of all this is not exactly one for the record books or anything. This aircraft is ridiculous. You'll go fly, your P-51, your P-47s, which we'll do later, and it'll be vacation. And you'll climb in this thing and you'll be like, what have I gotten myself into? Wow. But the good news is these planes are a little bit simpler than they look, but landing and getting in the air, not so much. Let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get that little sight glass out of the way. It's going to get in our way. For VR pilots, by the way, this thing is such a trip. I love it. It's amazing to see just how tiny this airplane is. So a couple different things we need to achieve here. One thing, of course, is we need to get electrical power going. The other thing we need to do, of course, get some fuel flowing. And then, of course, we need to get the people on the ground to basically get this thing cranked up to the power where we can actually get it going. This aircraft is surprisingly simpler than it looks. When you compare this one especially to its buddy airplane, which is, of course, the Focke 190s, this thing's actually pretty easy to handle. It's a good plane. It's stable. It's got some good altitude performance. There's not a lot of surprises, I guess is what I would say with it. But let's stop talking now. Let's do the thing, Haley. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to come down here on the German airplanes, of course. So we have a bunch of switches here, and these are little circuit breakers. And one of the nice things is they're pretty easy. You got one for your nav. You got one, of course, coming down for you can turn your wing and drop tank. We don't have that. You have your ignition switch. Like I said, it's right there. You have the Samlich, which is a battery. Of course, you got your radio. You've got the IFF system. And, of course, you have your fuel tank pump, which is this little guy right there. I'm going to leave these on automatic. A lot of people would say, you can't do that. That's not right. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't worry about it. It's fine. After you do that, of course, it's just a matter of making sure we're nice and secure on the ground here. A couple different ways we can do that. I'm a huge fan of holding the brakes. That works perfectly fine for me. What we're going to do now is we're going to come over here to the magnetos. We're going to slam them up into the ready position. We're going to come over to our throttle, which is located right over here on the side, and we're going to go turn on both fuel pumps, or fuel tanks, if you want to think about it kind of another way. After that's done, we're ready to start. There really is not a lot to this airplane, and that's one of the things I respect so much about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick our head out the window. We're going to yell at our ground crew, and we're going to go ask them to go ahead and run the starter.
Copy.
What we're going to do is we're going to open up this little panel here, and I see this little switch. As this thing is starting to go, we're going to give this thing a couple quick little pumps. Again, we don't need a lot. This thing builds plenty of pressure with the electric fuel pump, so I just give it a couple of victory. And all we're going to do is we're going to wait, and it's really important. I can't say this enough. Don't give up. Hold the starter until the thing completely stops spinning. You'll know what I mean.
Clear.
Told ya. You thought it wasn't going to start. I saw you. You legitimately thought this thing wasn't going to get going. I know you were thinking it. I knew you were thinking it. You just got to give it the time to go ahead and get started. So this thing is up and on. We're going to go ahead and slam the canopy closed. Nice and comfortable inside this thing. It's a very, very cozy plane. It's a little different organization than its buddy, the Focke. And, of course, things like the Spitfire and especially the P-51. Man, those American planes are a vacation to steer around on the ground. But now that this thing's going and I'm starting to get everybody nice and warmed up, we're just going to take a couple moments to go get all the critical stuff on here. We're going to make sure that's all turned on there. We just want to make sure that says that we've got air, which we do. Coming down here, you can set your little radio stations. I love how it's like kind of like the buttons like you get in the over in the American planes, or it's just like that. We have this handy dandy system here. Well, we can go flip this over into kind of navigation mode. We can actually utilize this. It works pretty darn well. And of course, if we needed to, we can sit here and kind of fine tune it if we're having issues with it. Now, once that system's going, of course, we're going to pop up to about 1,000 revolutions per minute. It doesn't take much to get this thing all nice and warmed up, buzzed up, kind of a thing like that. And then we're going to deal with a couple of the kind of things that sort of come up with this particular system. First things first is we have this lovely MW50 pump switch here. We're going to turn that sucker on. We're going to turn our wing cannons on. We actually don't have wing cannons, so I'm going to shut them right back off. We have a switch up top, of course, if we want to turn on our little handy-dandy guns up front. I can do that on the ground. I've got a little safety switch here that's going to block it from actually engaging. One thing you always got to remember, though, is there's this big charging button right here. And if you don't hit the big charging button, unfortunately, your aircraft's weapons will not charge, so you won't get to take advantage of that kind of a thing. Kind of a pain in the butt, if you ask me. But again, it's part of the fun, so to speak. Part of the fun. We go ahead and close that sucker out. We're going to go get this thing all squared away. Good DCS cheat for you, by the way, is if you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see our current heading is 62 magnetic. That's awesome, because now I can just sit here and set this to 62 magnetic. Voila! And now we're good to go. I don't have to stress about that too much. It was pretty easy. We'll reset this thing in a minute. A lot of people like to sit here and crank this thing to los. You can see los, go. And of course, when you do that, if your pressure drops a little bit, this thing tends to start kind of wandering around on you. It gets a little frustrating. So if you're wondering what we're waiting for right now, of course, it's our temps, our P's and T's to come up here. And of course, we have the oil temperature and we have the coolant temperature. This thing's pretty much all automatic. We can manually start pulling handles and cranking things, but we'll deal with that when we get over to our buddy a little bit later on, which of course is the, like I said, the BF109, Focke-Wulf 190. There we go. So with that all said, it's time to taxi this thing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Prepare for work. So one of the things you have at your disposal is you have this little switch here on my side. And what it does is it's designed to go ahead and lock out the tail wheel. I actually have a button bound for it. So if I push it, see the little thing that kind of aims forward? That's going to prevent the tail wheel from rotating on the ground, something that we definitely want it not to do. If we let it rotate on the ground, we're going to go all over the place. So I'm going to go ahead and release my brake, just like that. And it's going to take a few moments here, but it's going to start rolling. And it's going to start rolling pretty smoothly here. And I can't say this enough with this airplane. You got to take your time. You really, really, really got to take your time. So I have no differential brakes. When I hit my brakes, it's on my controller. It's all like the Russian or the British style here. So I'm kind of stuck, and it's kind of painful. So I'm going to go ahead and hold my brakes here. I'm going to disengage the tail wheel lock, give it just a little bit of left there, and I'll give it just a tap of power. Again, it does not take much. And you can see this thing takes about a millisecond before it starts rolling around on you. Now, again, I can go ahead and compensate with a little bit of right foot there, a little bit of right foot there, a little bit of right foot. And as soon as it's straight, you re-engage the tail wheel lock, and congratulations, you're going in a straight line again. This process goes on for a while, and as you notice, I really can't see well out the nose here. And of course, if I stood on the brake right now, I would probably do quite a number on my propeller there, so you have to kind of be mindful of that. It's kind of the, like I said, the nature of the beast of this aircraft. Of course, other aircraft, other countries are much, much simpler than this, but like I said, these things are optimized to be good in the air, not optimized to be good on the ground, or getting on the ground, or getting on the air. You'll know exactly what I mean in a minute. All right, so we're just going to kind of rumbly over to the runway here. Again, take our time. If we had a crosswind or something, we'd want to put our controls. By the way, did you notice that it did exactly what I said it would do, where it starts to go, oh, over to the side, and that's disappointing, but that's okay, that happens. So what I'm going to do is disengage my tail wheel lock. I'm going to go ahead and push my left foot as far forward as I can, and hope we have just enough airflow cruising over the tail right now that I don't really have to tap the brake. One of these days I will have differential brakes, but I'm not going to lie, I kind of like not having differential brakes, because when you fly things like helicopters, it's a vacation, because it's not so difficult to control. All right, nice and straight again. I'll go ahead and lock the wheel. Give it a little tap. Yes, there is sort of a party trick which you can do. And what you can do is you can go ahead and jam on your rudder really, really hard and just give it a burst of power. And what that will do is basically get it to kind of carry over on you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and disengage my tail wheel lock again. And we're just going to enjoy this nice right turn. And as soon as it starts to escape on you, all you do is you reduce the power just a little bit and you just kind of catch it. When we deal with Focke-Wulf 190 later on, of course, we can't cheat like that because the engine gets very unhappy at certain RPMs. So which is, I get it. So again, we're just going to give it a little tap there and kind of enjoy our little journey down over to the runway here. Looks pretty good. Again, I'm going to pull back a little bit, just kind of balance that out. Again, I don't have the tail wheel lock on right now. I'm just kind of looking out the side window here, kind of using references on the side of the runway to keep this thing simple. But man, is this thing a project. And if people were shooting at you right now, oh man, you'd be rushing and you'd be spinning out and you'd be embarrassing yourself every couple of seconds. And it's kind of one of those things. And unfortunately for us, we lose one major tactile aspect of this journey on the ground, which makes this a lot harder. And that's the fact I can't feel the tail wheel. Like in the real tail dragger airplanes, it kind of has a feel to it. Like you can feel the way it feels when you go tap the brake. Just something about it. And unfortunately, we don't get that. And that makes it about 10 times more challenging to know whether or not you've straightened it out before takeoff here. And that looks pretty good there. I'm just going to give it a couple blasts of the good old-fashioned, again, I'm keeping it as gentle as I can, trying to get us lined up at the runway here. Now, your goal here is to get the plane going as straight as possible. Engage the tail wheel, and we're going to go ahead and slow down here. Nice. Whoa. All right, let's get those flaps down. Now, on the regular model of this, there's actually a little sign on the side of the flap itself that will tell you exactly what your current flap position is. We don't have that. We got to use the Mark 1 eyeball. But usually what I do is if you look at the aileron there, see how the aileron at full deflection, it's just a little tiny bit more. That's going to be just about what we need as far as flaps goes. All right, we're ready for takeoff. Ho, ho, ho. Oh boy, I'm shaking my head here. So a couple things we want to check here. We just want to make sure our P's and T's are okay. I can see that we're good on that one, we're good on that one, we're good on that one. This thing's operating properly. There's a couple different ways I've found to get this thing in the air safely. A couple different strategies, I guess if you want to call them. Really depends on you and how much of a hurry you're in and stuff like that. But as a general, you're going to want to keep the tail wheel on the ground for the first about 100 kilometers an hour. Then we can let it kind of come up gently. We're going to stay off the brakes. If you tap the brakes, you're going to go right off the runway, and you're going to be another one of the accidents that this plane racks up. Trust me, they do. And of course, when we take off, we have to be very mindful of the tremendous torque this engine produces. One of the fun tricks that I discovered that you can actually kind of cheat a little bit is if you don't use full power for takeoff. We're limited to, we could theoretically go right up into this range, but pretty much anywhere between 1.3 and 1.4 is going to be plenty. Let's go ahead and I'll get ourselves all lined up here. We're about a 150 for our heading here. That looks pretty good to me. We can actually center that like that and get a pretty good little heading. Looks good to me, and I think we're ready to go. I'm just going to set this thing to Los. Right to gets. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure the tail wheel lock is engaged, which it is. Pull my stick slightly towards me, and I'm just going to smoothly apply power. There's 1.3. 1.4. That's plenty. All right, so the plane's going to want to jump off the runway. You want to resist that plane from doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let the nose come down just like that. And I'm going to let the plane come up on its own. Now, you're going to want to push forward on the stick. You do not want it to kind of explore. Landing gear comes up right away. A little bit of right foot. And I'm going to reduce my volume because I can't even hear myself think right now. This thing is just loud. Delightful. I'm going to go ahead and reduce my power down to 135 here. We're going to slowly milk the flaps upwards. I'm about 250 kilometers an hour. This is delightful. Again, we just have to look out the window to see how our flaps are going here. And I can see pretty clearly that they're coming up nicely there. And my flaps are up. Delightful. So this aircraft has a couple things to make it easier to climb. One of which, of course, it has a regular old-fashioned pitch trim. But you know what it doesn't have? Aileron trim. You know what else it doesn't have? Rudder trim, which makes it rather challenging, of course, to try to establish exactly what you want to do with it. So when you're climbing, of course, so we're going for about 260 to 270 kilometers per hour, of course, depending on how much of a rush we are. We want to make sure our P's and T's are looking good at all time. You can see we're at basically the upper limit right now as far as our coolant temperature goes. Oil's fine right now, and we gave it plenty of time to warm up. And then it's just a matter of just kind of relaxing. As weird as it sounds, that's really all the drama there is to this aircraft as far as getting into the air. You have plenty of power. And again, if you're looking for one World War II plane that has the German sort of insignia on the side, this is probably going to be the safest one for you as far as performance goes. So you're not going to have as much scary stuff with it. And I have run out of forward trim on this thing, which is not unusual. That's actually one of the natures of the beast here. And it's just, again, because of the fuel distribution inside this airplane, depending on what you're trying to do at different points. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and reduce power a little bit here. I'm going to come down to about 125. That's going to be nice and stable there. Not bad at all. One of the cool things they give you is they give you a little switch here. So what you can actually do is you can put on the governor automation, and you can see right now that the governor automation is actually turned on. So the aircraft is actually reeling itself in right now and sort of restoring itself to its normal power setting so that you don't have to kind of fight with it. One of the strategies people like to do, and I did mention this during my little takeoff, is people intentionally basically set it up so that when they take off, they're taking off at the RPM you saw me take off at, rather than having the governor kind of explore the RPM range. Kind of that's not that it's a cheat, but it's different. It's a strategy, but again, everybody's a little different. And one of the things you can do too, something I did not do in my little takeoff there, is I did not set the RPM to the exact level that it needed to be. I pretty much left it alone, which gave us that a very, very smooth takeoff. And it's just kind of one of those things that some people like the fits with it, other people don't like the fits with it. You got to kind of do what makes most sense for you, and obviously you don't want to damage the motor while you're doing things like that. But it's just kind of one of those little things that I found that kind of works for me that probably will work for others. All right, so coming on down here, we've got ourselves a little bit of altitude. Now it's a good time to take a look at how many L's we have. Looks like we have 3.9 L's on this thing right now, which isn't too bad. I notice we're not an instrument-equipped plane, which is, it's instrument, but it's basic instruments as far as that stuff goes. So let's go ahead and put this aircraft through its paces so you can kind of see sort of the weirdness that this airplane is. I'm going to go ahead and bring the nose down just a tiny bit here. let the aircraft pick up a bit of speed. And one of the things you'll find very interesting with this airplane is it was designed basically to travel at about 420 kilometers per hour. And you'll be sitting there going, what do you mean travel at 420 kilometers an hour? The thing is, all the trims in this aircraft were set for that. So once you hit that speed, you'll find that the aircraft is a little bit more stable and requires a little less attention on your part for control here. So I'm actually going to go here. I'll start backing my throttle up. We're about usually about 1.25 ATA, which is that little gauge that just went down to 1.25 in my bottom right. And you'll see here that we're settling pretty nicely here. It's actually pretty smooth, pretty comfortable. A little hard to see my little synced gauge there, but we'll fix that. And you'll also notice that all my trims are feeling really, really smooth now. This is kind of what the aircraft was designed for. Now, we're up pretty high. We're about 3,500 meters right now. And as you can see by my constant little tiny adjustments, this is definitely not a trim hands-off airplane. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other features of the airplane. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring this up here. It just makes it a little bit easier for me to see my vertical speed. And I'm going to let the nose come down just a little bit. And again, I'll start bringing a little of that trim. Depending on the center of gravity of this airplane is going to have a massive impact on how easy it is to trim. Usually you, especially if you're very, very, very medium weights like we took off at, you'll find that the trim is not going to be terribly easy to set. You'll basically run out of nose down trim on it. You need a little more weight in the front to kind of get away with that. So we're cruising along here. I can actually bring the power back a little bit more. We're doing well past 450 kilometers per hour. And now it's a good time to kind of explore a little bit of the limits of what this aircraft can do. Looking over at my radiators, temperatures, everything looking good. So the first thing most people think of with aircraft like this is they think about very, very quick turns. So to do that, of course, I'm going to kick it up to a 1.4 here. I'm going to go ahead and put my foot over. And I'm going to left foot, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a tug. Now what you're going to notice is my character gets very tired all of a sudden. He really, really could use a nap here. You know what? Naps are good. I like naps. Do you like naps? Because I really could go for a nap right now. And you're going to notice the aircraft starts buffeting. You also notice, you can't see though, is how far my left foot is right now. And you'll also notice the aircraft is just getting on the edge of a departure. All right, sticks at my chest. And there's the departure. So we're going to go ahead and gently pull out. We're going to respond and get the aircraft back under control. One of the great things about this plane is you probably didn't notice, but I'm going to go turn my plane real quickly and give it a tug. You'll notice we have those handy-dandy aerodynamic slats. Because of those, it makes it vastly more difficult to depart than some of its World War II contemporaries. It actually is not that it's departure-less, it's just a much, much, much simpler to go ahead and prevent it from basically running away on us like that, which is kind of nice. Now, if we take a right turn, we'll go ahead and kick it up to 1.4 again. Again, I'm keeping the plane as coordinated as I can. You can see I've got the ball right in the middle. All I'm doing is using my feet. I'm not on auto rudder. You can see it. See how it pulls to the left a little bit? That's because the aircraft wants to depart, and I'm just going to let it depart. I'm not touching the controls, and now I can go ahead and fly myself out of that. And notice I went way below the minimum controllable speed here. A little bit of right foot to kind of reset it, and we're looking lovely there. And I can see not too bad at all. Now, when it comes to acrobatics on this aircraft, relatively simple. One of the things you got to remember, though, is World War II's, just like modern days, these are energy airplanes. And, of course, I don't have a lot of energy right now, but what I do is I have MW50. I'm going to go ahead and take my throttle. I'm going to gently push it forward. Yes! Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Woohoo! Watch our temperatures climbing. There we go. Go ahead and pull out, and that is our MW50. It's a little compound that acts as like kind of an anti-knock and also increases compression in the engine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us up to about 500 kilometers per hour, and we're going to go over. And don't pull back so hard because you're going to lose a lot of energy. Keep that ball centered. As you get towards the top, you're going to go ahead and pull a little bit tighter than you need to. Watch out for the departure on the end. As we come out, of course, going to get a little bit of wibbly wobblies. And like that, we pull ourselves down at about 400 kilometers per hour on the other side. I'll reduce my power a little bit. A couple things you probably noticed during that is the fact that my lovely little slats did not jump out equally. Kind of the nature of the beast in this airplane is one of the things that makes it very, very challenging to do. But you absolutely can fight in the vertical with this particular airplane. It's not too challenging. One of the more dangerous maneuvers with this aircraft, of course, is anything that is upside down. We don't have ourselves a good, sophisticated fuel injection system. So, of course, our oil system is going to get very grumpy if if we're upside down, and our fuel system will also get grumpy. So if you're trying to pull one of these kind of things, where we go ahead and flip ourselves upside down, and go ahead and give it a nice little tug, you just have to be, again, very, very mindful of the speed you will pick up in this turn. And you can see just how hard this is on our little piloting friend, as we do our conventional little split S there as well. So again, I return to about 1.35 ATA, which you can see right there in the bottom, and that gets us going pretty darn smoothly. It's, like I said, not too bad. It's a relatively simple plane, and again, compared to some of its contemporaries, this thing is a vacation to fly. Keep in mind at all times, you're keeping an eye on those other controls. Now, what about the guns on this thing? And again, I'm not interested in that aspect of it. I'm much more interested in, like, how do you operate and fly this thing? We do have a couple. Of course, you flip over the safety. You have one for the little machine guns, and then you have one for the cannon. You don't feel much of a difference there, just because of the way it is. Of course, they had all sorts of fun gun pods and stuff like that. So when you're first learning to fly this plane, really any World War II plane, start by doing very, very basic corners, and just use your feet to keep the little black ball, which I'll go ahead and stare at really aggressively, right there, as centered as you can. And of course, as you kind of get the hang of that, you're used to now turning and trying to keep that black ball centered, which takes a little more coordination. And then, of course, when you're feeling good with all that, that's a good time, naturally, to start exploring some more aggressive maneuvers. But you'll find that most of your probably first 20 hours of this plane is just kind of getting comfortable with maneuvering with it without making it spin and flip out on you. So now, what about landing? Landing this airplane is a process. And by process, I mean it's a process. So right now, as you can take a look here, we're just about to the Tonopah test range. It's right off our left-hand side. Navigation on this aircraft, by the way, completely conventional. We're not going to be doing anything fancy. We do have this little gauge down here, which will tell you whether or not you're approaching a particular ground target. It's a little difficult to set up because it's linked to ILS, which it's not easy. Again, most of your time you're going to be spending away from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and secure all of the big, nasty, scary stuff, and we're going to get ourselves ready for landing this thing. Landing this airplane is it's an experience the first time. And if you've been practicing keeping that ball centered, you'll actually find it's not as bad, especially compared to some of its contemporaries here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by beginning our letting down process here. Now, the neat thing with this aircraft is because it's a liquid-cooled engine, when we pull the throttle back like this, everything is basically going to maintain itself and keep us going pretty darn smoothly here. Surprise guns! So we're going to go ahead and come around here and enjoy a nice little kind of overhead brake here into this landing. So the big thing we need to keep in mind with this airplane is it is a tail dragger. You can wheel land it. I've experimented with that. It requires you coming in at a much, much, much higher speed than what you're probably ready for. Again, our approach speed on this thing is about 220, about 230. Right in that range is going to give us a pretty good approach speed. And of course, over the end of the runway, we're looking at about 160 kilometers per hour, which is pretty comfortable. So what I'm going to do is I love the fact this aircraft just bleeds energy in a turn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm just going to go ahead and pull myself a nice coordinated left turn here. I'm going to slow down to about 300 kilometers per hour. And all we're going to do is we're just going to come on out just like that. And you could see that's all it takes to get this airplane a little bit more relaxed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go take a look at our lovely runway. You can see it's looking pretty groovy behind us. And I'm going to enjoy this rather long landing approach. Now, for those of you who are IL-2 veterans, you've had all sorts of fun experiences with these long approaches. And of course, when you're multiplayer and you're doing a long approach, everybody wants to come say hi and put holes in you. Part of the fun, unfortunately. But for us, you kind of need that approach because it's all about getting that speed and angle right. You know, if you come in a little fast, you tend to float for about an hour, and then you land. If you come in a little bit slow, you tend to pancake, and it's kind of bad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start my actual approach here. Like I said, I'm trying to get under about 350 kph here. And again, just a nice gentle turn like this is more than enough to suck the energy out of this plane. You can see it's actually starting to buff it on us because it's not happy. And again, I'm just going to enjoy my nice little turn. There we go. Nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get ready for landing. I'll go ahead and pull my flaps down. Go ahead and hold down the flaps handle. Again, it's a little different in this plane than it is in some other planes. And all we're going to do is we're just going to get this thing down pretty much ready for a landing approach. If you feel the nose kind of get heavy during this part, it's fine. It's a part of routine, really. There's about our 220 right there. It's going to be our approach speed, and you can see our flaps are as down as they're going to go. Okay, let's double check to make sure your tail wheel lock is indeed locked. I'm going to go slam that forward. It is. And you can see here we're very, very high. But one of the cool things is this plane has no difficulty losing altitude and speed. So I'm just going to let the nose kind of drift down on its own. There's about 300. I really don't want to get faster than that. There we go. Go ahead and level myself out, and now we begin the hard part. So what I want you to do is I want you to take as much time as you can to try to get this airplane right around our approach speed. We're actually still a little high here. I'll let the nose come down. And really, really pay attention to how even the aircraft is over the ground. One of the best things to do when I describe landings with this thing is I say it's a plop. You're trying to plop the airplane on the runway. See how it twisted to the right there? There we go. We're over the end of the runway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the throttle to idle. I'm going to pull our nose up, and I'm going to pay extra close attention to my slip indicator. You see how the airplane's slipping slightly to one direction, and then it tries to slip towards the other? So what we're going to do is we're just going to guide the plane nice and down, and like that, we plop. I'm going to take the stick, I'm going to pull it all the way towards me. I'm going to be very, very, very gentle. I'm not going to be whipping the controls one way or the other, and I'm definitely not going to hit the brakes. Hitting the brakes is a surefire way to end your piloting career here. And again, you can see how much work it is on the feet to keep this thing stable. Again, no brakes. Okay, I'm going to bring the brakes in just a little bit. I'm pulling the stick to my chest here. And we're down. That's it. That's really all there is to it. My mistake on that landing, I had a little bit too much speed, but a lot of that was kind of that setup that we had in the end. Now that we're on the ground, we can go ahead and open up the hatch, stretch a little bit, relax. Oh, no. Oh, gun still fire on the ground. Kind of handy, isn't it? And then we have ourselves a really, really nice plane. For those of you who are like, hey, this plane's pretty cool. I like the idea of something like this. Would you say this is the more approachable of the World War II planes? I would say it is not one of the more approachable of the World War II planes. It's probably the most approachable of all of the German planes, but it is definitely a challenging airplane to operate. If you have good differential brakes, which I don't, it's a little bit easier. Another thing that makes this airplane a little bit easier is when you're flying in VR, you'll find that it has a really nice kind of really good view. Like it's very, very comfortable to fly in VR, and it has this kind of like, I don't know the best way to describe, cozy feeling because of how tiny it is, but it really is a neat plane. It can drop bombs, it can carry fuel. I brought this thing up to 33,000 feet before. It doesn't like that altitude. The firepower is okay, but again, that's not really what we were interested in. But other than that, enjoy.